Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seconds Out Live. I'm Danny Flexen, delighted to be joined by Mr. Ayman Khan. And we're not quite recovered just yet from the monumental undisputed fight at Ring of Fire in Riyadh on Saturday night, which saw Oleksandr Usyk, somewhat controversial. No, I'm just kidding. Oleksandr Usyk take a fair and justified decision over Tyson Fury. The only controversy really seems to have gone among the fans about whether Fury should have been stopped in that pivotal ninth round. But we'll get into all of that. But first of all, Ayman, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm really, really good. Made a big error in getting rid of the beard. I wish it was like GTA where you could just go in the closet and put your beard back on. But apart from that, I'm still amped and pumped from getting the undisputed heavyweight title clash. Some people thought in the build-up, and I was one of those people that thought as well too, it could be a bit of a stinker in the lead-up to it. And by God, it wasn't a stinker. It was enthralling. It was gripping from start to finish. One of those fights that you can rewatch back as well too. So yeah, absolute great fight. Glad to be talking about it. Glad to have witnessed it as well too, and glad to see it happen. Hopefully, we'll get it in some form again in the future.
Now, guys, if you're not a subscriber already, please do subscribe. We've had a bit of a surge this week due to Ring of Fire, so let's keep that going. Give us a thumbs up as well for this episode, and get your questions and comments in if you haven't already. I'm going to have a look at the chat in a second, but we will try and read out as many as we can. So Nevin Pajkic, no idea if it's the real former Fury opponent or not, says the first 3 rounds are very easy to score. Usyk was busier and more accurate. That's both criteria ticked off. Yeah, I mean, it's still subjective. And there's not just 2 criteria, or criterion, actually, anyway. DB Cooper 1, of course. What on God's earth is that? What happened to Ayman? Did he lose a bet? I mean, they might not be connected. Vision Hawk 768 asked us if there's any Fury or Usyk interviews coming soon. I mean, we are pursuing both camps at the moment, trying to get someone on or both of them on in an ideal world. So stay tuned to Seconds Out. I mean, I would say that, but please do. The Smiths nerd, God, that's hard to say, says 1 to 3 Usyk, 4 to 6 Fury, 7 even, 8 to 11 Usyk, 12 swing, but when Usyk on pressure, 117, 111. That's certainly not how I had it, but maybe that's a good place to start. I think, I'm trying to remember, I think I had it 4-2 to Fury at halfway. I can't remember which of those 6 rounds I gave him and which I gave to Usyk. I think I maybe gave Usyk the first 2 and then Fury the next 4. That sounds about right. So 4-2, I gave Fury the 7th, which I know a lot of people think was quite close. So that's 5-2. And then I had Usyk sweeping everything from 8 to 11. 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah. So, and then the last round to Fury, but obviously Usyk had the knockdown. So in the end, I had it 1 point to Usyk, 114, 113, I think it was. Ayman, what was your scorecard?
Danny, it's exactly the same and pretty much the same sort of way of thinking that you had. I had it 4-2 up from those 6 rounds in, and very much similar as to what you were saying there. I think really what happened, those 4, 5, and 6 rounds, from a Fury perspective, really seemed like he had the blueprint down in terms of how to control, use his size, ability, his assets in terms of the long range and jab and that reach there. And he was really kind of setting what looked up to be the potential finish, because Usyk looked hurt from body shots, from uppercuts, which were landing well. He looked tired as well too. It was really, at that point, it was almost like it was Fury's fight to lose there. And then it all switched. I think it was the 7th round where it was the first of the 2 real devastating left hooks that landed, the biggest one obviously being in the 9th round. But that first one, I could see it happen right there and then, because he hit that left hook and Fury just didn't know how to deal with it. He was dabbing at his face. He looked really bothered, looked really uncomfortable. And the fight changed at that moment. And I wonder what happened to Fury's face there. Is it the wear and tear of the fights in the past? Is it the wear and tear of not looking after his body in between camps? Is it the wear and tear from fluctuating in weight? Is it just experience, getting old and those legs going, and everything being cumulative off the back of a real hard career when he's had hard fights in recent years? Is it all those combined? I'm not sure, but either way, Oleksandr Usyk was able to capitalize upon that, and Fury recovered in terms of his legs, but never really recovered in the fight. And that really was kind of where Usyk won the fight for myself. So yeah, it was a real gripping moment. That was that 6th or 7th round. It was before the 9th came.
See, the key thing for me, and it's a question I'll ask you, to what extent do you feel Usyk came back into the fight through his own will and determination and wrested control away from Fury? And to what extent did Fury give it away? Because from my point of view, watching it, it seemed like Fury became rather too casual and too lackadaisical, too reckless. You know, he felt like he had the fight well in hand. He was showboating throughout, even when he was losing rounds. And then once he got in control of the fight, he didn't seem to be throwing as much. He didn't seem to be cutting the ring off as well as he had been previously. To me, he allowed Usyk that door. He opened it a touch, and Usyk then kicked it down. What was your view on that?
Yeah, Danny, I don't really have a conclusion off the back of that, really. I think I need to watch the fight again to figure out where that fight was truly won and lost, whether it was Fury who gave it away or Usyk who won it from him. I like to give the credit to Usyk for taking that fight and really pushing through the gears. And I think what's coming through my mind right now is that the setup in the first 3-4 rounds, although I wouldn't say Usyk was particularly electric in those first 4 rounds. He did invest a lot in the body, which I think clearly paid dividends. And I've been trying to arrest us to, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I'll just give you a bit of a glimpse here. I still can't get my head around how Usyk was able to have Fury so visibly hurt when he's taken the biggest punches from Wilder in all 3 of his fights. Yet he never looked like that in all 3 of those Wilder fights or any other heavyweight, putting him in that much trouble. Still can't get my head around that at all. But I think it was the bodywork that really broke down Fury, which is really ironic in the sense that we'd question marked, or a lot of people have question marked, Oleksandr Usyk and his body. And I think at this point, actually, after Chisora at heavyweight, after the Joshua fights at heavyweight, now Fury at heavyweight, you might have to stop saying that body is a weakness for Usyk. He's really kind of solidified that as not being the question mark as it once was before. One other glaring thing that I had in mind here as well too is just listening off of the back of the reactions from the fight immediately in the ring. What stuck with me is Usyk said to Fury, "I've been training for you ever since 2008." And that kind of says to me that Fury was Usyk's Klitschko in the way that Fury was training for Klitschko for all those years, and he had his eye on him for that long, but Fury hadn't had his eye on Usyk for as long as Usyk had his eye on him.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the build-up, I said that if Fury beats Usyk, he'll have to do it in a similar way to Klitschko against Hay.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it did look in the middle rounds like that might just be happening, but was not to be. And I had the misfortune, I suppose you could say, of watching the fight alongside a huge Usyk fan, not a heavy Usyk fan, but a big fan of Usyk. And there was a lot of gloating at the end and a few tears before bedtime, I've got to say. Let's go to the chat, which is flying along at a rare old pace. Where are we? Right, Simon Brandy. Halfway through the fight, my bet was looking bad. I had £50 on Usyk to win in round 9. Gutted. Juice Willis. It should have been a unanimous decision. Yeah, I agree. I couldn't really see how that judge gave it to Fury. Well, I could, but I don't want to get us sued. Aztec 101 is the IBF stripping Usyk. I believe in the next couple of weeks they'll make a decision, but the very likelihood is that yes, and the second fight won't be for Undisputed, if there is a second fight, which leads us neatly to the polls. We'll put that out before I go back to the chat. We're asking you, after Ring of Fire on Saturday night, what happens next? Does Fury retire? Does Usyk retire? Do they both retire? Or will there be a rematch next up? If you can vote and make any comments that go along with it, really appreciate it. Modfather Vinny, if you can hear me, please bang that poll out. So going back to the chat, Kevin Chunk said, I had £50,000 on Fury winning. Yeah, we betting slips or STFU, Kevin. Thunder Road, Ayman looks a good 5 to 10 years younger in capital letters without the beard. There you go. Is that what you were looking for, Ayman? I don't know. Was that your aim?
No, not at all.
Fury was eating toad soup 3 months before the fight, says Kevin Chunks. David Howell, silk sheets, which is obviously a reference to Fury now being, rich and not really needing to fight anymore, but maybe struggling for the motivation to train correctly or even to fight with the right motivation. Vision Hawk 768, 115, 112, or minimum 114, 113 for Usyk. I'll go along with that. Pike Hitch again, Nevin. Fury defensive skills been overrated. He's always open, pulls back chin in the air, doesn't bring his hands back. It was just his size that stopped others landing on him. Yeah, I noticed that in the fight. There was a lot of times where he'd land and then stay in the same position, wouldn't move his feet or his hands back in position quickly enough and just got countered. by, a former cruiserweight who's got very fast hands. Juice Willis, I just want the AJ Fury fight in this lifetime. IBF stripping Usyk, that's another one there. We've just answered that. Nevin Pajkic, Fury had to work hard for the rounds he won, knew he couldn't sustain the pace for 12 rounds. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's why I felt that he was getting a bit casual and a bit lethargic. It was because he was running out of gas rather than because he took it for granted. Where else? Kevin Chan. Nevin Pajkic, Usyk landing the left hand to the body all night. JR, this is such nonsense, trying to imply that Fury gave it away. No, Usyk won the fight. I mean, they could both be true. There could be elements of both. If Fury did become too complacent, it allowed Usyk the opportunity to take over the fight. So I don't think it's necessarily, what did you say, nonsense. Every Usyk victory, it's his opponent who threw it away. I'm not saying that's definitely the case. I'm saying to an extent. Don't come for me, chat. Iron Fist. Usyk landed clean and legal shots, unlike many other boxing stars in inverted commas. Wrist and open palm shots, more air quotations there, are not scoring shots. Yeah, that's fair. Tyson isn't who he used to be, as silk sheets now. Yeah, David, I translated your analogy already, don't worry. DM Tuza. Usyk landed the left hand in the first round in the same spot that hurt Fury later. Iron Fist. Usyk is so good that most fans literally can't believe how good he is. Thunder Road doing the typical call out for more likes, which we appreciate. Vision Hawk 768. Usyk versus AJ3. Who you got? Yeah, let's pause the chat for a minute and let's address that. Ayman, who would your money be on?
Danny, just quickly before I answer that question, I just wanted to ask you as well too. You've had a closer relationship with Fury than I have, and followed Fury for longer than I have in my career. Obviously, you've been in the career a lot longer than I have. I just wonder how much of the full version of Fury, how much of his potential did he realize in the fight? How much of a true reflection of Fury did we get in that fight? Do you feel that there was maybe more to come for Fury, and then in a potential rematch? Because for me, at some points, it felt like we got like the greatest hits with the showboating, with some of the back foot boxing, which was also a bit of a surprise considering Sugar Hill's MO. How much of the full version of Fury did we get at the weekend?
I mean, he was certainly in shape, and he certainly started fighting at a decent pace. It wasn't like the Dillian Whyte fight where he was plodding around, almost landing at will. With Usyk, he had to really think about what he was doing. He was throwing a hell of a lot of feints in the first few rounds as well to keep Usyk guessing, stop him getting set and getting into a rhythm. So I think maybe not 100%, because if we say that, then what's the point in the rematch? But I think Fury probably didn't expect Usyk to be quite as good and to be able to land on him quite as easily as he did. Certainly the most shots Fury's taken consistently in a long time. He's probably taken bigger shots against the likes of Wilder, but not on a regular basis in the same way Usyk was peppering him at times with combinations. I think there's some issues with the corner as well, and I'm sure we're going to get into that. Too many voices and maybe conflicting advice at times. But I don't think it was necessarily an off night for Fury. I mean, you compare it to the Ngannou performance, he was certainly a lot better this time around and seems to have prepared specifically for Usyk's style as well. But I just think, I think Usyk, probably a career best performance for him and thoroughly deserved the victory. But going back to the question in the chat, and I'm happy to answer it first, I would fancy Usyk to beat AJ again. I think Usyk's just looked better and better with every fight since those back-to-back victories over Joshua. I know there was some controversy around the Daniel Dubois win, but I never felt that Usyk couldn't have got up if he had to from that body shot, and he certainly took Dubois' will by the end. AJ, on the other hand, it's hard to know how much he's progressed and developed under Ben Davison because we've only seen him against kind of mediocre opposition. That's no disrespect to the guys he's fought, including Ngannou, of course. But, we need to see Joshua really tested if he's to fight, say, a Filip Hrgović, for example, in between, if Hrgović comes through Dubois, of course, or Dubois himself. Then we'll know a lot more about just how much AJ has changed his style and how much, if at all, he's improved. But I do rate Ben Davison and his team very highly as a training team. So we'll wait and see. But if you ask me to pick right now, based on what we've seen recently, I would say Usyk wins again. What would you think?
Yeah, I think the exact same way. I'll just add a couple of bullet points to that. I think potentially. And I'll admit here, I'm clutching a bit when it comes to an AJ perspective, but here it is for you. If the time to try and defeat Usyk, if there ever was a time, sorry, to try and defeat Usyk, might it be now that he's essentially completed everything that is to do, is gained undisputed? The fight next for Oleksandr Usyk might not even be for undisputed again if the IBF is to take the belt away, even if AJ is to meet him in a next fight. Might another belt fragment? Either way, it's not going to be the glorious occasion it once was, considering as well too that's a fight you've beat twice as well. Is the motivation, is the silk sheets creeping up on Usyk, who now has the decision to weigh up as well, that he might retire? You start putting those things in your head, then your feet start to move from being in boxing to being outside the ropes, and that's a bit of a mentality switch for someone who's so feared or so well respected for his mentality in the ring. It's what got him to the place that he's at right now. So those are the small kind of things, as well as a bit of wear and tear too. There was the little image or little few second video clip of Usyk being carried back to his dressing room. There's the scars, there's bruising under the eyes as well too of a now confident Joshua. Still a tough fight, but the other thing going for Joshua as well, he's got a research packet in the form of Ben Davison and Lee Wiley, who are highly confident they've got a game plan or are able to answer the questions that Usyk poses through film study, whether that is the answer for someone who's has got such a deep skill set, a well of skills there that he can pick up that maybe no film study could ever really kind of reflect on a sheet of paper, that Joshua might be able to execute as well. Joshua who's has his own, I guess, demons as well too to face in that Usyk fight. Those are really kind of the key things that might lend towards a Joshua victory, but really you're like I said, admitted clutching towards anything to that for Joshua, and you have to put Usyk as a really high favorite in a third fight if it's to happen.
Okay, guys, so if you haven't already voted in the poll, please do. We're asking what's next now for Fury and Usyk. Do either of them or both of them retire, or will there be a rematch next up? At the moment, Rematch has taken a very clear early lead in the poll, so please do make your voice count. And please do give us a thumbs up and a subscribe if you have not already. JR, he's in the chat. He says, Fury was just beat by the better fighter. It's that simple. Fury had a few good rounds between 4 and 6 in particular. However, he just couldn't sustain that as Usyk didn't allow Fury to take breaks. DB Cooper 1, Klitschko said they don't want to give a rematch. This is their payback for Fury not giving them a rematch. I can see Usyk retire on a high. Yeah, I believe retirement's the only way out of the rematch, though, because they are both contracted. Kevin Chunk says he also had £200,000 on Usyk winning, so put that in your pipe and smoke it. Thanks, Kevin Chunks. Can you lend me a score? Who else we got? DB Cooper 1, you've had enough for a minute. Victor Rodriguez, I felt like Fury could have won. Thanks, Victor. That's all I was saying, really. Keatso says, Fury looked concerned the whole fight. Dancing around and crowd interaction looked like a cover and self-confidence booster. Great fight, though. Yeah, one of my friends who was texting on Saturday night said similar to that Fury was using it as a cover for being genuinely intimidated and not really knowing how to beat Usyk. Seashell 200 says, Fury's confidence has gone. Ngannou and Usyk have hurt Wilder took too much out of him. It's quite possible Fury is over the hill. We won't know, I guess, unless he fights again. Pajkic again. AJ had 24 rounds to beat Usyk. He says he had the wrong game plan first fight. You think 24 rounds would be enough to try and post size. Only way AJ beats Usyk is if he ages him out. I mean, I suppose the argument now would be that he had a training team that he wasn't entirely happy with the first two occasions he fought Usyk, and maybe now under Ben Davison and team, he fancies his chances a bit more. AE says Usyk footwork and feints are grossly underrated. Simon Brandy, this might sound crazy, but I would favour Fury in the rematch. And I bet on Usyk to win. Yeah, but did you bet as much as Kevin Chunks? That's the question. CMP Russell CMP, isn't Usyk the gent of the sport? Well, he's not the only one, but yeah, he is certainly a gentleman. Nat saying 2-minute excuses or reasons being given for why Fury lost. It's simple. Usyk is the better fighter. Is this an alt account for the other one I just read out? Was always going to end like that. Simon Brandy, I disagree completely. Usyk didn't look as good as that first AJ fight. Both guys shown vulnerabilities. Ooh, set up nicely for the rematch then. Who else we got? I'm just scrolling down. Big Chungus, Fury said he's never cared about legacy. Do you think that's true? I'm not sure he cares about legacy generally, although he is a student of the sport, so I'm sure he'd like to have his name mentioned up there with the greats of the heavyweight division. But not only that, I imagine he's quite embarrassed after everything he'd said about Usyk in the past, although most people took it with a pinch of salt. I imagine he's quite embarrassed that he was, badly hurt and beaten by the, blown up middleweight. Oh, Kevin Chunk's offered to lend me 50 quid. That's a right result. Hold on. Lend? Just one. It's outside. Vision Hawk 768 says, who's the greatest heavyweight of all time? We might come to that later, Vision Hawk, because we're going to be talking about Usyk's place in heavyweight history, so we'll get to that. But just a couple more points on the fight itself before we move on. So 2 key things, I think. One was round 9, where Fury was almost stopped. And there's been a lot of criticism, questioning of the referee in this case, of whether he should have stopped the fight or, ruled it over rather than give Fury a count. The referee obviously judged that the ropes had held Fury up under Usyk's onslaught. And there were a lot of people, including, people that I think have got good boxing knowledge, were asking about standing 8 counts and they're only allowed in the amateurs and so on. It wasn't a traditional standing 8 count. If a fighter is knocked towards the ground and the ropes held them up, then you get an 8 count and then you assess if you're allowed to continue, just the same as if you've been knocked on the floor. The only thing I would say is that you could argue that Fury was intentionally using the ropes to hold himself up rather than got knocked into the ropes, which broke his fall. And I don't know if there's a bit of a distinction there in the officials' handbooks. But Amy and I talked about this up there. Referee, and I think he did the right thing. I think, you see Fury's legs dip. He reaches out with an arm to try and grab the top rope. And it is only the ropes, it seems anyway, that are keeping him up at that point. Now, the ref could have let it go on, of course, and Usyk maybe would have landed a definitive finishing punch. And I don't think anyone would have really complained, except Fury's team, of course. But, I think letter of the law, the referee did the right thing. But, Ayman, how close did you feel it was to seeing a stoppage in that 9th round?
Yeah, I mean, pretty close, especially as well to considering it came at the end of the round and the bell definitely saved Fury to a degree. I echo the same thing, the same way really to you. I thought it was a good piece of refereeing. I've only watched it back. I only watched it on the fight now. I've not gone and sorted it back, but there's 2 points of contention for people. I think it is that being, first of all, those ropes holding them up. And I think the referee just about, pretty much got it right. I think he could have made the call for the ropes holding him up maybe a couple of seconds before Fury ended up, before the call was made. Sorry, better way to describe it. But then I think other people, and I think also Usyk showed a very good way to kind of hold himself back a bit, because if he'd landed a punch then, Fury was sort of down. That might have actually bought Fury a bit more time as well.
He might have lost points as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a real good reservation there from Usyk to read the moment as well as he did, when the adrenaline must have been pumping for that finish. Then comes the other point, is where maybe a referee could have stopped it there and then. And first of all, just for any Wilder fans in here who are still crowing about the long count, it's not a 10-second count, it's a 10 count. Much so with that as well too, I don't think Fury looked the most confident that he was really ready to continue, but the referee gave him that benefit of the doubt, maybe trading a little bit on Fury's past, considering he's been able to come back from the quote-unquote dead as he has beforehand, and trading on a bit of his history of being able to climb off the canvas and recover well. He did prove to recover well in the end, but that might be a point where on another day or another referee might have called that fight off there. I think for me, because of the occasion, you give the fighter every chance to continue, and the ref erred for me on the right side to allow Fury to continue at that point. It's especially in light of the bell sounding at that point. So I think the right calls were made there.
Vision Hawk 768 says the ref stole a KO. We've seen him take a KO before as well. It wasn't a KO. They played that enough in the build-up. JR, what do you think of the chances of Joshua versus Fury next? Personally, think that should be next for both, before both get too old. I don't think Fury can get out of the contract. I think he can only get out of the rematch contract if he retires. I don't think he can go and fight someone else. But obviously, we know that Turki Al-Sheikh has wanted Joshua against Fury for a long time. Yeah. So if there's any way out of it against another opponent, Joshua is the one. Vision Hawk says most referees would have stopped the fight. DB Cooper 1, people saying ref should have stopped it are barking mad. The ref was fine. It's an impossible job. Worse than being a Premier League ref, given 1% of the purse. Well, yeah, not sure about that one. That needs greater scrutiny, I think. Nevin Pajkic, refs robbed Usyk of the KO. He was 1 to 2 punches away from putting him away. Either call a knockdown straight away. Hesitation stopped Usyk from landing the final blows. Snake Tree says Fury got exposed. Big Chungus asks me, what do I think of beardless Ayman? I think he could fit into the bloodline in WWE now. I think he's got a certain Samoan look about him. So, yeah, I'm a fan. Who else?
Are you a fan of Big Chungus?
I don't know who Big Chungus is.
Mm.
I mean, I'm a fan of him being so polite and reverential to us. Nevin Pajkic, if roles were reversed, Usyk wouldn't be hearing the final bell. The ref would have stopped it. AE, what do you think about Fury's post-fight comments about Ukraine sympathy points? To me, sounds like sour grapes. Yeah, I mean, it's completely sour grapes. He shouldn't have said it, heat at the moment and stuff, but no real excuse for that, is there? And I think, didn't he withdraw it or correct himself later? I'm not sure. I might be giving him excuses he hasn't actually made. But yeah, I mean, stupid thing to say, obviously. Simon Brandy, Fury wasn't throwing back when doing his zombie walk. Most refs would have stopped it, especially over here. David Howe, too many cornermen for Fury. We're going to be talking about that in a minute. Big John is the worst person to have there. Too biased hurts a fighter. I get what you mean. Snake Tree, the Fury uppercut would have knocked most heavyweights out. I don't know. We haven't seen many one-punch knockouts from Fury, have we, outside of Dillian White? Kevin Chunks, Lennox Lewis, a champ so spry, collects false Oh, no. I think that's his idea of a limerick. I think we'll leave that. Simon Kurt, stop retiring people. Why the hell would they retire? Over £50 million on the table each and boasting in their mid-30s. We're not saying they should retire. Neither of us have said that. We just put it in the poll as an option. What do people think is going to happen? Michael Murray, ref did exactly what you said. Called a knockdown because the rope stopped him going down. Gave the count, asked if it's okay to continue, and said, put your hands up. There you go. That's a great, succinct recap of our last 5 minutes of chat. Who else we got? Oh, Simon Brand again. Fury can fight AJ. Usyk isn't going to demand a rematch. He won. Only Fury can instigate a rematch. I think they did a 2-fight deal, and I think the purse split was dependent on it being a 2-fight deal. So I'm not sure it's that simple for Fury to just, fight AJ in the middle. But then I suppose if they said to Usyk, look, you're guaranteed the money you were going to get for the rematch in your next fight, it might be Fury, it might be AJ. Whoever wins, that's who you fight, and he's still getting the same money. I imagine he'd be happy with that. Big Chungus, Ayman, as much as I love you, the hair is looking like you've touched a plasma ball. There you go.
Yeah.
Quite a niche reference, but we'll go with it. There's been a lot of criticism of the corner, primarily, I think, sparked by Fury himself, who after the fight said, they told me I was winning. And I'm paraphrasing, but pretty much, if I'd been told that I had to get him out of there in the last round to win the fight, I would have got him out of there. Which kind of makes me think, if you could have got him out of there, why didn't you anyway? Just to be sure, even if you thought you were winning. But yeah, either way, there were a lot of voices in the corner. Among them, Big John Fury, of course, Sugar Hill Stewart, who is the nominal head trainer, and Andy Lee, who's his assistant in this case, but a trainer in his own right, of course, as well, a former world champion. What did you make of it, Ayman? The kind of, not just too many voices in the corner between rounds, but also sometimes it seemed conflicting information.
Yeah, especially in the clips that I've seen recently. I think Andy Lee come in under some stick as well too, but I've since seen a clip where Andy's kind of telling Fury that he needs the last 2 rounds, and he especially needed that last round as well. Sugar Hill's MO is to go for the KO, but I think it's Big John Fury specifically that's telling him to not take any chances or any silly risks. And when you've got so much floating around, I imagine it's hard to filter out what you'll listen to or what you'll go for. And considering you got your father there in the corner, he's been with you from day dot naturally. It's hard not to go with your blood in terms of the decision you're making there in the ring. And I think that's what's cost Fury. It's kind of a shame, really. And it's also a little bit weird because that chaos to some degree has happened with different voices in the corner. Andy Lee's been in the corner beforehand. He's had Ricky Hatton in the corner, Freddie Roach in the corner. He's had other voices in the corner. I think he finds comfort from, being in the chaos as well in the midst of that break too. Maybe that helps Fury's mind, and that actually helps him in the corner there, hearing those little bits. But either way, the decision process, which is Fury's at the buck for it, a better way to put it, is Fury's, and he made the wrong decision in executing what he wanted to do in the final round. I think Fury's got to, whilst he says his corner should have told me something different, and yeah, they'll have to take a portion of responsibility in not seeing the fight for how it was to a degree because it was close on the judges' scorecards. Fury's kind of got to take the flak, really, and maybe some people will be shuffled around or indeed removed if the rematch or another fight comes for Fury next year. I wonder who that'll be. I wouldn't like to say right now, especially with it being quite recent, but a lot of people are kind of have it is weird. I'm not saying this to be the case or pointing the finger towards Sugar Hill, but I do also think it's very strange, and got to give credit to Usyk, of course, for effecting this, but I do find it strange that, and I was asking this question in the build-up because Fury looked thinner, at least in the face, that maybe it was a nod to Fury boxing more. But if Sugar Hill's MO is to come forward on the front foot, then somewhere the tactics got wrong because Fury didn't do enough of that. So they've got to address, and the inquest has got to start with everything for that Fury corner. But also the corner has to put that forward themselves and maybe not giving the right advice, or someone not giving the right advice there to help Fury towards that title.
Now, as we move on to our second segment of the episode, which is basically about the future for both men, we know Fury immediately afterwards said, let's run it back in October, but we're not entirely certain if that's going to be the case or not. Please do vote in our poll, which asks that very question, what is next for Usyk and Fury? And we do mention retirement of either or both as possibilities, but there's also the option to go for a rematch next time out. So let's just have a look at the chat. I don't want to miss any while we're doing this. Sugar Hill will be the fall guy for Andy Lee to take over, says Thunder Road. Big John needs to piss off out of his corner, says Nems95. You tell him. Kevin Chunk says, is Sugar Hill from the Sugar Hill Gang rap band? Very good question, Kevin Chunks. Maybe with your extra money you've got, you can research it yourself. Nevin Pykich, if Fury has such a good read on fights, how do you think he was winning? His corner full of fighting men couldn't see the truth. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they all thought he was winning, or wasn't it if he won the last 2 rounds, he would win. So I don't think they did think he was winning, if he still needed those 2. And as I said, on my card, and I think on Ayman's as well, he only lost by a point in the end. Not our card mean anything, to be fair, but he won on one of the judges' scorecards and was close on another. So, yeah, maybe a bit more effort, a bit more endeavour in those final couple of rounds, and he could have got a decision. Thunder Road says Fury was hearing voices like Randy Orton. Yeah, they talk to me, they understand. Big Chungus, Happy New Year, lads. Yeah, thanks, Big Chungus. Same to you. The referee has 4 followers on BoxRec after 30 years, says Snake Tree. When did we start judging referees on their BoxRec followers? It's terrible. What's next? Instagram. Mr. 142 is asking, you're a Spurs fan. I'm not sure who he's asking. Gabrielle NG says Deontay Wilder next would be interesting. Mixed Memorabilia says, hi, new to the live show. Absolutely fantastic performance by Usyk. The old saying is a good big guy beats a good small guy, but this was an excellent small guy. Hats off to Usyk. Henry Bassey says the 2 guys did a very great fight. No arguments there. It was an exceptional heavyweight contest, I thought. Seth Rotol won, which is a great little pun-heavy handle. Says that crack about his country being at war factoring in was dirt. Yeah, I think we panned that appropriately. Michael Mori, Usyk is not small. On a lift, 99% of people would comment how tall Usyk is. Yeah, I agree. I've never been in a lift with Usyk, but I imagine I would make that comment. Just moving on. What will happen next? Modfather Vinny, if you want to whack up the next headline, that would be appreciated. We know that the rematch is kind of tentatively penciled in for October. Fury took a fair bit of facial damage, particularly around the nose. How keen he'll be to take an immediate rematch, having lost for the first time in his career, it remains to be seen. There's a lot of money on the table for the rematch as well. Both men will feel like they've got a good chance. Usyk because he's won this time, and Fury because he was winning the fight and, still only lost on a split decision, an unfair split decision in my view, but that's not the point. However, Fury's often talked about retiring. Frank Warren, in his interview with Radio Raheem on our channel, hinted at the fact that could be the case again. Usyk now achieved his monumental thing in winning undisputed titles at both weights, which is excellent. He's obviously got other things on his mind in terms of his family back in Ukraine, who he hasn't seen for, 7 months, I think he said? No, 9 months when he recounted it. So there's reasons for both to perhaps sail off into the sunset. What, Ayman, do you expect to happen?
Yeah, I think, first of all, the real card holder here is Turkey Al Sheikh over in Saudi Arabia. If you ever look at rematch clauses and their influences in recent years, especially with Deontay Wilder and the Fury case. Fury was trying to get out of that fight to fight Anthony Joshua, it was, and Wilder had to go all the way to arbitration to ensure that Fury would perform his side of the contract, which Wilder eventually won, and we got the third fight. So that shows you how powerful usually contractual clauses for rematches are in the past. However, if you look recently in recent fights in Saudi Arabia, specifically with Joe Parker and Zhilei Zhang, there's no real reason why Zhilei Zhang wouldn't have taken the rematch with Joe Parker unless there was a better option on the table, or more money, or both, or an easier winnable fight, aka a better option on the table. And that's there for Zhilei Zhang. The money's still there. The fight might be more winnable for him, and he can then choose to get rid of it and not take up his rematch clause. Joe Parker can do what he wants, and he can go still have a fight and still get some money. And that's what's there here now in this fight. And that means that the rematch clause for Tyson Fury doesn't hold as much weight as it once does, because there is that lure of that Joshua fight, and he can say that, look, I'll fight Usyk later on, because it will be made, because there is someone who can make the fight, because the money is there to make the fight. So I don't think it means as much anymore that even if the rematch clause is an exercise, that we won't get the fight in the future. However, for myself, I do think the rematch clause should be exercised. I do think Fury should go for the immediate rematch, much in the same way where Fury climbed off the canvas in the first fight against Deontay Wilder. He then went forward, and everything sort of started to unravel for Deontay Wilder. And I think they'll see that 4th, 5th, 6th round as the blueprint for their success in the rematch if they're looking to take the rematch. I think that's what they'll look to do. I think they'll look to really kind of hone in on those rounds and go and try and do that to Usyk again, who, like I said, mentioned earlier in my previous response, who might have been there, seen it, and done it, and not be the same form of motivated Oleksandr Usyk as he was once before. So I think they do take the option of the rematch. I think as well too, it does take a little bit of the shine off, especially from a world point of view as well. I don't know how much interest there is in, no offense, but as direct as I can be here, in 2 losers to Usyk on a world sense, like, for example, America, 2 Brits as well too who lost to Usyk contesting for a belt, or maybe no belts, whatever it is. It's a Brit fight for sure. Maybe should happen in Britain. We still have that interest, but the shine comes off of it a little bit. But the shine gets back on if Fury can beat him in the rematch. And I think for a competitor like Fury, who said so much in the past as well too, that he couldn't be beat by a middleweight, he couldn't this, that, and the other. And I take Fury's comments with a pinch of salt, but he'll have a bit of a bruised ego, and someone for me who's put themselves as one of the best ever in the pantheon of all-time great heavyweights. I think he'll want to rest that, and I think he'll look to make that decision.
Yeah, I mean, if Fury fights Joshua instead next time out, I would really feel for Usyk for coming off a career best performance. You know, at cruiserweight, he had to pick up all the belts on the road. He's finally getting the money, the status, the glory that he deserves, that his skills and his application and his endeavor deserve. And then he's got to look at his 2 biggest money opponents fight each other instead of him. And there's no guarantee that if Fury goes in against Joshua and loses, he might not retire then. And Usyk never gets that rematch. And then on the AJ side, same thing. You know, he could lose. I suppose it's better from Usyk's perspective, maybe if Joshua does lose, because then he's guaranteed that rematch still with Fury. But yeah, I mean, I think that was a pretty poor way of things turning out. Because then who does Usyk fight? Hrgovic? Or, you know, another top contender, Zhang, like you were saying earlier, Parker?
I would not be wildly surprised to see Vladimir Klitschko come out of retirement and fight for some form of title. I know that Klitschko a few years back was looking at fighting again. Some organizations have changed their decisions, especially when it comes to undisputed like heavyweight title fights and their belts being contested for. Could he be slotted in if he does decide to return, given his pedigree in the past, although not fighting for many years, and also the political ramifications of that fight as well too. Usyk said to Klitschko on a phone call, I think he said that he wished that Klitschko came back and did win a world title. Could Usyk offer that opportunity to Klitschko? That might be something there that could be an option. That's whilst Usyk wait if in the possibility that Fury doesn't take the fight. But that's something out there that I think Usyk would be really interested in.
I think that's one of our clip outs for tomorrow. Sorted.
There you go.
Let's just go back to the chat. Simon Brandy, Fury doesn't do immediate rematches. Can Fury's reputation survive if he refuses the rematch? I mean, it survived a lot more than that, so I wouldn't worry too much. DB Cooper 145 days till October 12th. Plenty of time for a holiday and restart camp. Boxers have become princesses accustomed to inactivity. As Tyson says, get up there, son. Isn't it, boy? Luke says, round of applause to Cabal. Where does he go next? We'll be talking about the undercard shortly. Larry Jerry says, for Usyk, there is no motivation. Retirement into glory. Big Chungus, just giving more Ayman Khan love. Red Black Titchy says, Fury versus AJ and Usyk versus Hrgovic would be the best next. Nevin Pajkic, media will just say both fought with the wrong game plan and would beat Usyk in a rematch. I don't think it's just the media. I think the fighters themselves would probably say that as well. You've got to say something, haven't you? A, to assuage your own ego and reassure yourself you can beat everyone you face, but also to sell a rematch, because if you're just going to get a part two, people watch it because it was an excellent fight, but you want there to be some doubt over the winner. XX Quimo XX says, Klitschko, no way. Larry Jerry says, Klitschko, zero chance. They're shitting all over you, Ayman, already.
Yeah, fair enough.
X Khan, that's obviously one of Ayman's relatives, says Larry Holmes got a shot. Why not Klitschko? So there you go, bit of support. DB Cooper 48-year-old Klitschko comeback. Please explain what the fuck. Well, I think he just did explain it, didn't he? Seth Rotol 1. Lennox is more likely to come for Usyk than the big fella. Simon Brandy, Usyk versus Cabal is a good fight. It's a good fight, but it's not a particularly sellable fight, is it? Kevin Chunk says Usyk versus Herbie Hancock. CMP Russell CMP, do you think the Gad will come up for a bit of light and air now? I don't know. Wasn't there a rumour that he got arrested over there and he's being held in a Saudi jail? No, I'm just making it up. I'm sure he'll be back and in good spirits soon enough, if he's not already. X-Khan, the Klitschko said that Usyk was the future of the heavyweight division years ago before he took his first professional fight. DB Cooper one's asking if you're related to Amir Khan, Ayman. Shame he didn't fly you out with Ryan Garcia on the private jet. Luke says they need Terry O'Connor for the rematch. Harking back, that's a deep cut there, Luke. Harking back to Fury's contentious victory over John McDermott back in the day in their first fight. So yeah, we shall see what the future holds. But while we are talking about Ring of Fire, there's still plenty more to get into. And I suppose what we should be talking about, in case he does retire for one reason, is Usyk's place both pound for pound right now and his place in history among the great heavyweight champions of all time. So let's start with the probably easier one to discuss, and that's in the pound for pound list, because I know some people do, they're loath to put heavyweights in the pound for pound list, but because Usyk's won multiple titles down at cruiserweight as well, I think it's probably fair. And I know people are putting Fury in the pound for pound list, selected ones. Where do you think Usyk kind of sits now?
Yeah, I'm not really start this out and caveat a little bit, but I will answer the question. Not really a pound for pound guy. It's too subjective for me, and everyone will have their decision, but not really the best for me. But I'll happily answer the question. I think for me, if you're playing with the pound for pound rankings, you've got to put Usyk as number one. I think what really is the kicker for me is the leaps in weight for Oleksandr Usyk. The way he's beaten the fighters for Oleksandr Usyk, real good fighters at cruiserweight as well, too, real close fights that are away on away soil, which is a big kicker for Inoue. Most of them done in Japan for Terence Crawford, in the US, barring I think Ricky Burns, wasn't it? There might be a few others in there, but largely over in the US, Oleksandr Usyk has gone away from the Ukraine, away from Poland, away from countries of that ilk, and fought on the way soil to get those close victories, and deserved close victories as well too. I think for me, that's what kind of sets Oleksandr Usyk apart from every other person in pound-for-pound contention, and that's why I'd place him. If I was to place him in the pound-for-pound rankings, I'd put him at number one.
Now, Usyk's place in history is slightly more difficult in that a lot of the people that are generally on the all-time heavyweight top 10 stayed in the heavyweight division for quite some time, more than Usyk, in fact. And you do still have to factor in his previous excellence at cruiserweight in the same way when we judge Evander Holyfield, I suppose. But that makes it more difficult. He's certainly the best of his era. we can get that out of the way because he's obviously defeated Joshua twice and now Fury. So there's no doubt that of the top 3 or 4 of their era, a bit like the top 4 in tennis when you had Djokovic, etc. Djokovic beat the others enough and won enough Grand Slams to put himself a step or 2 ahead of the rest. But then in this case, I think he's never fought Wilder. We know that, but I don't know if we're ever going to see the kind of peak Wilder again. I think it's pretty clear now that he is the number 1 of his generation. So then you have to look back through history. Now, Holyfield was someone I mentioned as a former excellent cruiserweight who came up. You could argue that they were kind of similar at cruiserweight, similar time spent in that division. Usyk, as you pointed out quite rightly, won all his World Boxing Super Series and world title fights generally as a cruiserweight on the road. So that maybe puts him a step ahead of Evander. But then Holyfield went up, he beat Riddick Bowe, was still competing for world titles quite late into his career as well, when he was clearly past his prime, went to a draw with Nikolai Valuev, I think, or slight or close defeat. I'm trying to remember. I was there for that fight, but I don't remember the exact result. So yeah, longevity is on Holyfield's side. We won't be able to judge Usyk in that context until he retires. But I don't know, you've got Muhammad Ali, of course, which is one that people always bringing up. Then you've got the other kind of runners and riders. You've got Lennox Lewis is often in top 5 now. Joe Lewis is often up there. But these guys are all kind of career heavyweights. So Usyk's a bit of an anomaly in that sense. I would probably place him above Holyfield at this point. It's a struggle to put him in the top 5. But then that leads to the question, who would he need to fight and defeat to get there? As we said, Wilder is probably not the Wilder of old. Maybe if he beats Fury again, maybe if he stops Fury the second time, that could kind of elevate him up that list. But I think he must be happy with just being one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in history rather than heavyweight specifically. I'm not sure. Ayman, who do you think are going to be kind of Usyk's biggest threats now, aside from who he's already fought?
Yeah, I was just having a quick look at the heavyweights just to refresh my memory with it all. And this is part of the problem. And this is part of the reason why a lot of the older heads kind of point to this generation, point the finger and say that it's not as depthful or not as much pedigree within the rankings as there used to be back in the day, because none of the current top heavyweights really kind of strike out to me as being any real tough challenge to Oleksandr Usyk, which is why also, if you want to look at legacy, which is why maybe the rematch with Tyson Fury is so crucial to him to add to that bit of legacy, because he's beating once again one of the consensus number 1 or number 2 of the top 3 in the last few years of the heavyweight division. Beating Tyson Fury again cements that. Beating Joshua again, maybe in the third time you could also add that a little bit, because Joshua, although placed right in fights, let's say that right now, off of the back of his comeback to the defeats to Usyk, is on a bit of a steamroll back to getting back towards some of the best of AJ beforehand. But other than that, who is there? You got Joe Parker, who's on a form of resurgence right now, who does look really good, but is that the type of fight really that cements your legacy? I think it adds to it, but it's not. It doesn't really. It doesn't do it for me. Then again, you can say the same with Hrgovic, Cabal. I don't think Cabal's looked good in recent years, but he's not. And people have talked about. They were talking about on the stream I was watching. It was DAZN bought the pay-per-view, and they were talking about how it should be Cabal and Parker next. Nice enough fight, but what's Cabal really done to earn a shot that high up the chain so far, when for me Parker has had great wins in Wilder and Zhang there, who yes, there were question marks about Wilder, but he's now added to those question marks and beat what was in front of him, and then as well as Zhang too, who had brilliant wins over Joe Joyce. I think Parker's looking higher up his that chain as well too, a bit more of a bigger opportunity. So who really else out there is there for Usyk? Guys like, from a Brit perspective, guys like Atalma, who featured on the undercard, way too raw, not ready, not going to be ready in time that Usyk eventually Usyk might not be there by the time Atalma is truly ready for that fight. Fabio Wardy as well, stuttered in his last fight to a degree. Great fight with Fraser Clark, but if you want to be pushing on from that level, you should be, either fighter should be beating the other fighter. So unless you want those names just to add it as being the fighters from the recent years, like a Wilder, like a Parker, like a Dylan White, then maybe. But otherwise, I think that's why it's so important getting that Fury rematch, that he, does get that rematch and maybe goes for that trilogy with Joshua, because nothing else really adds that greatly to legacy in a division which, for the older heads, isn't as good as it used to be.
So Seth Rotol 1 says regarding Usyk, high on the pound for pound list, excellent all-time cruiserweight, mid all-time heavyweight. Hard to argue with that. X Khan said Usyk is number one pound for pound. Kevin Chunks wants to see Turkey Al Sheikh fight John Fury. Yeah, but we don't. I think we'd all be backing Turkey to win that one, wouldn't we? I think he'd be the more popular one among boxing fans at the moment. X Khan, the golden era was when Holyfield became champ and Lennox Lewis closed out the golden era with Vitali. Vitali and Vlad reigned in what we call the dark era of boxing. Yeah, but that's because they were so dominant. I think it's a bit harsh to, throw shade at them because they were so good. Seth Rowe told Larry ruled the post. I think he means roost. Oh no, sorry. Larry ruled post Ali pre-Tyson era for like 9 years. Got there eventually. Sorry about that. Lennox is almost 60 years old, because someone will talk about Lennox potentially coming back earlier. Mixed Memorabilia says, I agree this generation of heavyweights is not that strong compared to the past, so there's no real legacy cementing fights in this era. Ken Norton and Oscar Bonavina would be champions easily. Simon Brandy sticking up for Cabal there says he beat Sanchez, WBC number 1. We're going to talk about that fight, don't worry. X-Khan, Cabal has had 2 impressive victories and Parker or Zhang should be next in line. How Dubois stayed in the mix is beyond me. He lost to Usyk, he got his shot. There are other guys, Hergovich should be first. I think being promoted by Frank Warren's probably helped him out a bit in that regard. Who else? DB Cooper 1, have you seen the picture Turkey posted that Usyk punch landing on Fury? It's my background. It will go down in history. Kevin Chunks talked about his Aston Martin. It's fictitious, I'm sure. A national acrobat. Frank Warren has money invested in Dubois, and that is why Dubois is still in the mix. Well, there you go. I didn't need to say it. I just needed to wait for a national acrobat to come bail me out there. So, yeah, we are going to talk about the undercard. Modfather Vinny, if you can hear me. We will swap the headline over, and there were a number of upsets on there, as you can see from the caption. Which one to talk about first? I guess we've already brushed on Agit Cabal defeating Frank Sanchez, who put in a very strange performance. Ayman, how surprised were you by the showing from Sanchez?
Just quickly, for anyone who's in the chat who was criticizing the undercard, how do you feel it delivered? Because I thought the undercard was really good, like as a whole there, especially with the outcomes of the fight. I thought it very much delivered from top to bottom. So apart from a couple of mismatches as well, for some of the rising talents, but in fights that mattered, I thought they delivered in real interest. So if anyone in the chat here was saying beforehand that they thought the undercard could be better, let me know what you thought in terms of its actual delivery in the form of Agit Cabal, who wasn't fancied once again in this fight with Frank Sanchez. I thought it looked brilliant. Like both, I think we all in the predictions video, myself and the 2 Joshes joshing around, with myself and the 2 Joshes, we picked Cabal to beat Frank Sanchez. And I think the pick started to solidify when you saw the brace around Frank Sanchez's knee. And I think for Sanchez, who I know it's quite lazy to say he's a Cuban, so you've got the Cuban movement. I don't think he's quite as fluid as some of the lighter Cubans are, or some of the amateur Cubans are, but he's got that good movement and angles for a heavyweight, which he does use. I think that hindered him being able to jab and put Cabal at bay a lot more, which meant that Cabal was able to just bulldoze through. I don't think Cabal it wasn't a high IQ performance from Cabal. I think he knew that he was in with the wounded warrior and he beat him down. Cabal didn't look particularly hurt at all. I just think he realized that he couldn't do anything. He couldn't get anything off. And essentially, he quit there, really, if you want to put it out there. I think Frank Sanchez quit in the ring against Cabal. And there'll be some big question marks about Frank Sanchez as to whether he wants it. There are some question marks surrounding Frank Sanchez as to legitimacy of him and his age. I haven't dug enough or know enough to know about that. But if those whispers about that are true, might he want to come back after this defeat to Cabal, who, whilst is seen as a bit of a hidden gem who's now breaking through, is at a certain level. So a loss at this level isn't the most devastating, but it's not the most of a road as it used to be to come back from, as it was once before, now with the Saudi intervention. But might it not be there for Frank Sanchez now after having that defeat? Those are the questions he'll have to answer. But Cabal looked great. Put the combinations together. Looked like he really put dents in fighters higher up the chain. And you've heard whispers about Cabal and that Chisora win looks better and better. When people say that Chisora didn't turn up, well, I think Ajit Cabal must have turned up. I never saw the fight myself, but those were kind of the reasons slash excuses.
I wouldn't watch it back if I was you.
Fair enough. Danny must have seen it.
Yeah,
but
it was pretty boring.
We've heard those whispers about. I think Joshua AJ really kind of puts a lot of credibility behind just how good Cabal is. But there's also this feeling that Cabal is quite well off. He doesn't really need boxing, so he's been waiting for the right opportunities, waiting for the right pay.
Do you think that's who Kevin Chunks is?
Yeah, that's it, Kevin Chunks.
Kevin Chunks Cabal.
Put an umlaut under the U. Yeah. Yeah, but now is the time for Cabal to really, really kind of push on, because he's really proven himself as a real up and coming player in the division. I don't think he's ready. Don't think he's deserving of the Parker fight. But the fight I would like to see actually is maybe him versus the winner of Ruiz versus Miller, or maybe him versus Jermaine Franklin or Jared Anderson. I think that's the appropriate level of fight for Cabal now next. But it was a good win for him. Moving forward to Cordina versus Kachi. Look, it was. I remember back in 2019 when I was at the Midlands Mayhem, and it was Kachi versus Sam Bone for the British title, and in that weight, super feather, you had Zelfa Barrett, you had Archie Sharp, you had Kachi, Sam Bowen, others in the mix. And for me at that time, Sharp looked like the guy who was really going to kick on and go towards world level and really going to contend. And moving Sharp out the conversation, it was Kachi. There was loads of question marks about him from some of the conversations I had with people on the Irish scene who had the ear to the ground, whether Kachi really wanted it. Talk of him not being fully committed to training, really kind of looking to just do the us civilians type of jobs and really not kind of having his heart in it. But I remember doing the interview with him in the lead up to the Bone fight, and he made me the most confident I'd ever been in an underdog that he was going to win just by the way he responded to all those questions. And from then, I'd kind of kept a little bit of an eye on Kachi, and it was great. It's great to see him kick on and claim a world title after having a few injuries, the unfortunate pullouts and fights not being properly favored by Frank Warren as a true Queensberry fighter, but he will be now after delivering the first blood to Queensberry in the Matchroom 5v5. He set up the Queensberry win there nicely and gained an IBF world title. Might it swung differently had Kachi not thrown that punch after the referee called break? I think that was the referee's fault there, not being strong enough in calling the break with his instruction there. Although this is the same sort of way that I feel about Shiraz and Skeet, where I think this outcome was going to happen anyway. Although Cordina didn't have a massive dent in him before that had happened, I think the fight was setting up that way, and you could see the signs of this happening. And Cordina, who the whispers were around people from who were on the ground in the fight week, that he was looking and he did indeed look really bad on the scales. Apparently, he was doing a lot of road work in the heat, in a sweatsuit, running around, trying to shed off the weight. That's alleged. It's not been confirmed or anything, but these are the whispers I'm giving to you, essentially saying to you that Cordina shouldn't be at the weight anymore. And that's also the other side of the Saudi stuff, because the money's there, so you'll play with that risk reward more so than you would have, because I don't think Kachi would have figured in Cordina's mind years back, but because the money's there, Cordina must have taken it before he looked to move to the higher division. So I think that's the next step for Cordina, who never seen really Cordina in those kind of situations before. So I hope it hasn't taken too much out of him, but good wins there for both Cabal and Kachi on the undercard. And quickly, Moses Atama, Mazentsev not really belonging in the ring with Atama, but Atama did what he needed to do. And also another quick word also, Sergei Kovalev, sad to sort of see Kovalev go out in that sort of way. It felt like his opponent so far really held back that gear before the eventual 12 and could have probably got rid of him sooner. But yeah, Kovalev, a modern great at light heavyweight. hopefully that's the last time we see Kovalev in the ring.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with pretty much everything you said. Let's not forget that Joe Cordina won his own British title at lightweight. He only moved down to super featherweight after that, where they felt he had a better chance of succeeding at world level. Because I think there was a feeling among his team that up at lightweight, he wasn't the biggest and he wasn't the strongest, so he might get balled around a little bit. And we probably saw elements of that against Kachi down at super feather anyway. So, yeah, I think it is the right time now. He's a two-time world champion, of course, after he had his hand injury and had to give up the belt the first time. So it probably is the right time for Cordina to move up to lightweight. As someone pointed out in the chat, Agit Cabal beating Frank Sanchez was a final WBC eliminator. One of the many times we saw WBC President Maurizio Suleiman in the ring that evening. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how much being in a mandatory position means at the moment while there's still a rematch on the table for Fury and Usyk. But, yeah, I mean, Cabal, if they do want to get rid of the mandatory, it's a marking time fight potentially for Usyk, and Cabal might raise his stock further even if he doesn't win. So I can understand it. But, yeah, I'm kind of in line with you. I'd like to see him fight a bigger name first. That might sound unfair because he's got those clear upset wins both times now against Makhmudov and now Sanchez, two very different styles of fighter he's overcome there as well. But yeah, I mean, put him in with, I don't know, who else is out there that we need to see what happens on the next big show, don't we, at the 5v5, as you said. Because you've got two big heavyweight fights taking place on there. Maybe he fights one of the winners of those ones. Maybe he fights a Wilder if he somehow comes back and overcomes Zhilei Zhang. Or maybe he fights the winner of Hrgovic and Dubois while they wait for their IBF shot. It'd be great if you could see all the number one contenders from the various sanctioning bodies kind of duke it out. So there's one true mandatory contender by the end for all the belts. I think that's very unlikely to happen. But if anyone can do it, it is Turki Al-Sheikh. So we shall see. And yeah, 100% agree on Kovalev. I included that in the upsets, but I kind of fancied the other guy winning from the start. Kovalev's never really impressed at cruiserweight. He'd been out the ring for a long time before this one as well. And he was going up against an unbeaten, not intimidated, ambitious opponent, and Kovalev looks a shadow of his former self. And yeah, I mean, I agree with you completely that hopefully his team put a bit of an arm around him and tell him it's time to walk away. You just don't know how financially secure he is, of course, because presumably if he was, maybe he'd have retired some time ago. Let's go to the chat, probably for the last time in this episode, but we've got loads. Hold on, we had that Dubois one already. Mixed memorabilia. Can you please answer my Parker question, guys? You might have to send it again, Mixed Memorabilia, because I don't want to scroll through all the messages again. Lily and Fekitoa, 60 million each. Who'd say no to that? You'd be as mad as a dead dog's nuts. Why would a dead dog's nuts be mad? Anyway, Joe Cordina got exposed as a matchroom hype job, and that's from Thunder Road. Wow. I mean, when he won the title, I thought he looked really good against Rakhimov. And Rakhimov was a good fighter. So I think that's a bit unfair on Cordina. I mean, I think there'll be certain, jibes people use against Cordina, like other members of the same gym. I do not go along with that. I thought Cordina was fighting quite well before Kachi broke through with that big shot. So yeah, let's see how he gets on at lightweight before we, write him off completely. Boxing 24/7 says Cabal makes Dubois quit. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're going to make that fight, to be fair, but I suppose it's another way back for Dubois if he loses to Hrgovic, different route. DB Cooper won. Even the Isaac Lowe fight was solid. I didn't see the Isaac Lowe fight. That's how good the undercard was. Joy Oppenheimer was underwhelming, I can't lie. Yeah, I mean, we didn't really talk about that because it wasn't one of the upsets on the undercard, but that was pretty dire fair between Oppenheimer and Bree this second time around, especially after the standard they'd set from the first one. It only really got exciting in the last 2 or 3 rounds, which is a bit... But maybe it's a bit of a reality check for everyone who's been anointing Joy Oppenheimer as, pound-for-pound contender, best cruiserweight in the world, when a lot of that was based on him beating 2 domestic-level opponents in Jordan Thompson and Ellis Zorro. So let's wait and see, But, yeah, I mean, Breedis could have done more earlier, I think, and made it a closer fight, but Joy Oppenheimer seemed, for the most part, content to win with something in reserve. X-Khan, Joshua is good, but in my opinion, he has no ranked victories over a top 5 fighter. He's not been tested since Usyk, that's true. It's good to win, but where are the credible victories? He needs a Hrgovic fight. And we might still see that. Let's wait. It looks like it's going to be him in Wembley in September, doesn't it, against either Dubois or Hrgovic. DB Cooper 1, Eddie Hearn now has no British male world champions. Funny times. Yeah, I mean, I haven't checked that, but I assume you're telling the truth. You wouldn't lie to us, would you, DB Cooper? Simon Brandy, you should never judge an era until it's gone. I remember Lennox Lewis era was criticised. It was only years later it was appreciated. Kevin Chunks going on about his wealth again. AE says the great heavyweights of the past never had the same size and weight disadvantages that Usyk has. So for me, that makes Usyk the GOAT. I mean, that's a bit of a stretch. And there were quite small heavyweights in the past. You know, they didn't come up from cruiserweight, but they were small heavyweights anyway. So I'm not so sure. You know, you look at like Rocky Marciano wasn't a big heavyweight, was he? X-Khan, the money bag was worth a risk. Now Frank has no belts. The Prince worked him. Jai Optai won that convincingly. Yeah, he did, but in very tedious fashion. A national acrobat. AJ is popular because he appeals to the Marvel superheroes loving teenage casual boxing fans. It's a very specific reference there. Luke Chamberlain has fell on his feet, being Turkey's favourite fighter. He needs a step up in grade. I just missed out on 18-1 first round knockout. Could see it coming after 30 seconds. You want to have a word with Kevin Chunks, Luke? He'll be your tipster from now on. Who else we got? Mixed memorabilia. Do you think it was bad management on behalf of Cordina team as he can't make that weight anymore? This fight could be detrimental for him, no? If he's really struggling to make the weight, but then knowing Tony Sims as I do and how close he is with Cordina, I'd be very surprised if that was the case. You know, Cordina, either he's overseen him and thought that he could make it safely at least one last time, or Cordina's assured him that's the case if he works with a, separate nutritionist and so on. But I wouldn't ever think someone from that gym would be kind of served up, if that's what you're getting at. Boxing 24/7, fighting, coming in with injuries, messed up the accumulator, should be some sort of fine, making fans think you're healthy. I assume that refers to Frank Sanchez with his knee brace. DB Coop 1, Cabal sums up why Saudi is great for boxing. Activity is amazing, and we actually get to see fighters prove themselves instead of fighting once a year waiting for mandatory positions. Who else? Kevin Chunks. I think we're just going to ignore most of his. Oh, Kevin, no, definitely ignoring that one. I read it till the end and thought, yeah, probably better not. I think that's it for now on the chat. But yeah, so if you haven't voted already, we are going to be closing the poll in a minute or two. So we were asking what's next for Fury and Usyk. There's options that we've put in the poll, both of them to retire, either of them to retire, and of course the rematch being next up. So let us know what you think as quick as you can. But Ayman, what's your kind of one abiding memory or message that you'll take away from Saturday's event?
It was an amazing occasion. I think we got to see a real good Tyson Fury pull out his greatest hits in the dancing, in the jabs, and the movement, in some of the uppercuts, in getting up off the canvas. With your greatest hits, it sometimes, mostly means that your best days are probably past you now. And I think that's a sign for Fury that we're definitely on the bit of decline for Tyson Fury now, but he's still, and as well as Usyk, of course, still miles ahead of the rest of the crop. For me, Usyk looked brilliant, dazzling, absolute heart of a warrior to when Fury was controlling those rounds to make those adaptations and really take the fight away from Tyson Fury, or if Fury let it slip, as we debated earlier. The one thing I'd take away though that really kind of left a mark on me was when in the post-fight press conference, Oleksandr Usyk was asked by Wally Downs Jr. and I asked Wally Downs in the interview about it as to this question. He said to Wally that in a previous interview, I think it was Steve Bunce, he said, my father used to come to me and have the conversations. Obviously, of course, after his father passed, they used to have that conversation with each other, and he told his father after that, Wally asked him if his father came to him before this fight with Fury, and he said that he told his father not to come visit him, and Usyk was visibly in tears. He had to stop the press conference, and I think it's hard to say, and it's a question I've asked a couple of people as well too. I think this boxing journey as well too has probably helped Oleksandr Usyk get over, or help as much as he can get over the loss of his father too. And that was nice to see him, accomplish and give kind of the credit to his father who couldn't be there in the corner. So that was a real lovely take away from that fight night. So it was a brilliant fight night. Hopefully we get to see it again in some form. But yeah, brilliant night.
Great stuff. Now we've got the results of our poll. What happens next with Fury and Usyk? Big turnout, big voter turnout. Rematch being next up is 46%, so a runaway winner, it's fair to say. But perhaps more interestingly, on the subject of retirement, both retire, predictably got a very low result in 6%. But fans clearly think it's much more likely that Fury retires than Usyk. 29% suggesting Fury might retire, and only 16% for Usyk. So yeah, the rematch is still a heavy favourite, but it does seem like if anyone's going to pack it in, it's going to be Tyson Fury.
I think that's off of the back of Fury, playing around with retirement, playing with fire a little bit in the past, so people, can probably see Fury, quote unquote, retiring. I think a lot of talk has been about whether Usyk might retire. That's more probable to me, although that doesn't reflect in the protocol. But I'm glad to see them want to see the rematch as well too, because that's what I want to see, because it was such a good fight. Yeah, I do hope we get it in some form, even if it's not for Undisputed. But really, I said this as well to someone on the phone the other day. Is it really Undisputed if you've got a rematch clause, so it's still disputed to some degree? You've got to do it twice? I don't know. So even if that belt isn't there, the IBF, people will still recognize it as being the Undisputed rematch. So yeah, I want to see it. I want to see that Undisputed rematch between Usyk and Fury.
Good stuff. Well, guys, thanks for joining us. As always, if you haven't already, please do give us a thumbs up and a subscribe. And if you're watching this on playback, obviously you've missed out on the hilarity of the live chat. Kevin Chunks being this week's star, of course. But please do comment on the version you're watching, and we will respond to some of those as well. But Ayman, as is customary, you get the last word. You've kind of wasted your last words on the last comment, but you can do it.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that there wasn't too much, like I said beforehand last week. Forget about the tribalism and being pure Fury, pure Usyk. I'm glad to see that reflected, and no one's really kind of fanboyed anything here. I'm glad people have just enjoyed the Undisputed fight week for what it was. It was a real great occasion. Again, hopefully we get it again, but make sure you keep tuned into Seconds Out Live. Good to see a healthy amount of people here in the chat. Hopefully we get to see you in the leaner weeks as well too, chopping it up as you guys do so well, giving us the contributions as well too in the chat. We'll be keeping you abreast of all the information in the Taylor versus Catchall 2 fight week. I will be there in Leeds. What it promises to be another exciting and electric fight week where there is real bitter feelings towards each other in the form of Taylor and Catchall. Catchall naturally feeling from the first fight that he was robbed of that decision in Glasgow. Now is on somewhat neutral territory against Josh Taylor, who's a lot to prove now. A lot of people really writing off Taylor's chances and his career, future career to a degree. So a lot to prove for both men. Going to be a good fight week. So make sure if you haven't already, hit the like button, subscribe button, drop us a share, leave us a 5-star on Spotify as well too, if you haven't already. But that is the final thing from this week. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Cheers.